You don't have any customers. No one is talking about your product online or sharing it. No one wants to join your company. Your mom doesn't understand what you do. And so what I'll be talking about, I think, throughout the podcast today is how you can use a design mindset or a business mindset to design things before you start to code.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos sean todos a un capítulo más del podcast VCs LATAM, espacio donde invitamos a fondos de Venture Capital de la región a platicar para conocerlos más, así como curiosidades de ellos. Por primera ocasión en el podcast tenemos un episodio en inglés, por lo que estamos bastante emocionados y nerviosos de lo mismo, pero ojalá que lo disfruten. Pues nada, sin más preámbulos, vamos a darle y pues nos comparten sus comentarios para ver si les gustó el formato. Okay, our first guest in English, Nick. Welcome, my friend. How are you
Gracias.
today?
Bien, bien. Gracias por su hospitalidad.
Okay. Nick, as you know, you are the first person we have in English for this podcast. So thanks for being so brave and thanks for the patience. You're gonna need today a lot of that. So again, welcome. And first of all, who you are, and who are you representing today? Sorry that I didn't introduce Porter Foster Ventures, a company builder, where you are partner. But please introduce yourself and who is
Sure.
this company builder and where are you based, of course.
Sure. I'm living in Mexico City now, and we'll be here for another year or more. Been loving the city. I'm originally from New York and also spent some time in Chicago. I am a designer and founder. About 10 years ago, I was a part of a venture-backed SaaS product
Okay.
that went through a number of pivots over 4 years. And I got really good at understanding the minimum effective dose of customer testing, branding, marketing, research, and now spend my time at my venture studio with my two partners and wonderful team, helping early stage companies test and iterate their products really quickly and at low cost, so that they can find success a little bit faster.
Okay. Something that you just mentioned that got me thinking is you say, I got very good at this, and that. It calls my attention because most of the time I think we people do not recognize what we are good at. So that's a very interesting way to start. Uh, and you got me thinking like, okay, what am I good at that I can that I can share with everyone? Like, yeah, I'm being humble. I am not showing off. I'm just saying like the truth. So interesting. Um, so you
Maybe.
are you are you are partnered at Further Foster Ventures. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, so what do you guys do there? Yeah, let's start with that.
Sure. We help B2B and B2C software products and platforms learn how to grow their products and find what we call product market fit.
Yep.
I think it's a very common term these days, but basically understanding who's buying the product, what they're buying, and how to make sure that those two things are, those are finding each other and that it's happening in a convincing manner. A lot of what we do is find data
Okay.
through marketing tests and secondary research that indicates the likelihood of success for a company. And so for a B2C company, we'll oftentimes run some social media ads, drive traffic to a website, have some pre-signups, reach out to those signups, interview them, and then gather those insights and put them back into the top of that funnel and help founders create a cycle of learning that directs their product development and the entire company.
Okay. So basically just help them to get and understand their first users, and with that information build a first maybe MVP or first product. I don't know.
Yes, and new features as well. A lot of times, a founder might already have an MVP and they need to change it. And what I've learned in my career is that markets change, products change, competitive landscapes change, user preferences change. And so we as founders and as company builders always need to be changing with it. And the best way to do that is by listening to your users really well.
Okay. I'd like to sum in this thing, well, this process that you mentioned, like helping founders with the data interviews in order to launch something. Last week, yeah, last week I had this conversation with this founder that told me that, hey, we are going to launch this in 2 weeks, and I would like to have a conversation with you just to hear what you got to say. And at the end of the Zoom was like, okay, thanks for sharing with me all of this, but did you think about creating first a WhatsApp group to connect those people instead of creating a whole product? It was like, I didn't, but thanks for that. I'm gonna do it. Like, bro, you are 2 weeks away from launching, so a little bit late,
This is really
but
common.
yeah. And here the question is like, um, recommendations to for those first-time founders who got very excited about launching a product instead of validating. You already mentioned some examples like, hey, launch this thing on social media, talk to the people who sign up. But are there other examples that you can share with us?
Absolutely. I think before we get into examples, I'd like to talk about the mindset
Okay.
that is most popular in the entrepreneurial tech scene. Um, Developers, engineers, coders were some of the first entrepreneurs that were most successful in the digital landscape. And they did what they were best at, which is coding and building. And as more people come into entrepreneurship that don't have the engineering skill set, um, their instinct is to replicate that model.
Okay.
And what I do as a designer is learn as much as possible before engineering anything. And I think the example you gave is perfect. I meet tons of founders that will build first and ask questions later. And what I'd love to try to be a voice of is asking questions first and maybe not even building, but wondering what you're going to build and understanding how to build that the right way and the right steps. And the way that you can do that is by listening to the customer really well. It's very common, like design, everyone can be a designer, or more people can be designers, right? They can bring the design mindset. It's a lot harder to be an engineer. And so what I'll be talking about, I think, throughout the podcast today is how you can use a design mindset or a business mindset to design things before you start to code and learn as much as possible as fast as possible without spending too much money.
Okay. Do you have like a framework or book that you would recommend that you use
Yes.
or have used?
Yeah, our methodology is a combination of maybe four
Okay.
of these frameworks and methods. One is called the Google Venture Design Sprint, and there's a great book called Sprint that is available in Spanish that walks you through the process of a design sprint. That would be the first. The second is a research framework called Jobs to be Done. And the Jobs to be Done framework was popularized by a guy named Tony Ulwick and a couple of others. And the metaphor is that every product or service basically fulfills a job for a user, an end user. And so we need to understand what that job is and how they articulate it, how they solve it currently. So Sprint, Google Ventures Design Sprint, Jobs to be Done, Lean, the Lean startup methodology is I think the backbone to a lot of what we'll be talking about today. Learning, iterating, also very common. And then I think the fourth, and is my favorite as a designer, is called Hooked. And the Hooked model was popularized and kind of invented by Nir Eyal, who's a product designer and researcher who has understood the process of making a product addictive or sticky.
Yep. Okay.
And it talked about how to hook a user and keep them involved over the life of the product. So we've combined the best parts of those. I think the other, maybe the fifth, would be Shape Up, which was popularized by Jason Fried and the entrepreneurs at 37 Signals,
Yep.
or Basecamp, which is the software product they created. And we just take the best of each of these parts and put them together in a way that entrepreneurs can practice.
Okay, nice. I have, well, this year I took a course for Jobs to be Done. Yeah,
Nice.
it changed my way to think.
It
This.
really, it's game changing. And the way, what I'd love to call out about the Jobs to be Done framework specifically is the forces diagram, which we use to synthesize interviews. And I can speak for days or hours on that, but I would totally recommend to your listeners to look up the forces diagram related to Jobs to be Done.
Okay, nice. I guess that you have also hear about Test Mom, the Test Mom.
Yeah. I think um, anything that simplifies value propositions and um, puts them in front of people that like don't get it or don't understand it is a great litmus test for marketing ultimately. And I think the mom test helps stress value propositions. And if your mom can get it, hopefully everybody else can.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Well, actually, my mom doesn't understand what I do for a living still, so
Same, same.
I filing there. Um, do you have like, well, you mentioned some methodologies and kind of explain a little bit of your process, but in terms of the interview, which is a very, or for me, has been a really complicated thing to achieve, like have a good interview. Um, I don't know if you have like any specific tips for that, or well, the question is very specific, but
Yeah, interviewing is, if I were to say, probably the most important part of the customer discovery process. And founders will say that they did interviews. And what they mean by that oftentimes is they talk to some friends or they talk to 10 people once. But interviews need to constantly be happening. If you're not talking to your customer on a weekly or monthly basis, you're not learning as fast. And if you're not learning as fast, you're losing your competitive edge as a startup. The main thing that differentiates us as startups to the companies that have tons of resources, money, employees, etc., is the speed at which we move.
okay,
And so if you can do your interviews well, continuously and fast, then you're always going to be ahead of the competition. And I think I might share more in the master class about this, but I would say the most important part of interviewing is writing a script ahead of time
Yeah.
and sticking to that script with each of the interviews that you do, so that you can find themes and commonalities between those responses. And that's where the insights actually are drawn from. Another thing that a lot of founders will skip is documenting those interviews and the insights that came from it. It's a missed opportunity for your future team members and for future you,
Yeah.
right? In a year from now, you'll kind of forget, or it's a lot to hold in your mind, why you made this decision a year ago or how you got where you are. And that's important insight for future employees and teammates to understand, and really actually helps bring those people on board because it makes your arguments really believable. So your hiring process and onboarding process will be a lot stronger if you can bring those kinds of research tips and summaries and synthesis to those conversations, in addition to investor conversations and fundraising conversations. That kind of data is super valuable.
Okay. Now that you mentioned like script and documentation, I remember our first interviews. It was like we download out a script from HubSpot, I think, and we just adapt the questions and we
Right.
just like try to ask them all, and that was it. Like, okay, I'm gonna read the answers again and again. But this last time that we have some interviews, it was like, okay, let's create our own script. Let's compare with other script that we can find on internet. Let's record the conversation. Let's hear that conversation again and again and documentate the outputs into. We use mural. Yeah, we use mural to put like the main ideas, like, okay, this is the pain, or this is the job that they want to get done, and this is some possible other features, or this can become a feature into our platform.
That's perfect. Using the jobs to be done framework to construct your interview script is the way that we do it, and that the way that we would recommend, because it illuminates every part of the consumer journey and allows you to find the places where you want to dig in more, without losing sight of the context in which your problem lives. So glad to hear that. And I would encourage your listeners to check out the Jobs to Be Done framework as a backbone to their interview scripts.
Nice. Nick, before continue this conversation, we would like, well, we have a sponsor, so if you
Sure.
allow me, happy to hear our sponsor's message. Este contenido está patrocinado por absolutamente nadie, por lo que si tienes la intención de llegar a una audiencia regional, te invito a que te des la vuelta por nuestro website, des clic en el botón de patrocinios y te enteres de qué manera puedes patrocinar este podcast y otros contenidos de Startuplinks. De igual manera, nos puedes escribir por LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, o directamente en mi LinkedIn, Israel García Ballesteros. Será un gustazo ver cómo te podemos echar la mano para que puedas llegar a una audiencia enfocada en startups, venture capital, principalmente en México, Colombia, Chile, Perú, Argentina. Por lo que si te sobran unos dólares y quieres aumentar ese reach, encantado de ver cómo te podemos echar la mano. Además, te pido a ti, sí, tú que nos estás escuchando, si tienes oportunidad de elegir dónde escuchar este podcast, escúchalo por favor en YouTube. Esto nos ayudará a crecer y llegar a ciertas métricas que nos pide la plataforma para poder monetizar nuestro canal. Monetizando nuestro canal podemos seguir creando contenido, elevar la calidad del mismo y generar también mayor cantidad de contenidos. Ese sería un súper, hiper, mega favor. Y también de pasada nos dejas por ahí el follow. Que sigas disfrutando de este contenido y nos vemos pronto. Okay, so we're back. Um, Continuing with this conversation, Nick, you already mentioned product market fit, and that's kind of the core of the conversation. For you, or how would you define product market fit? Um, yeah, that's the question.
Okay, how would I define product market fit? Um, I like to describe product market fit as kind of a feeling that has a few symptoms. Um, Customers are signing up. The first is that you're getting a lot of signups, a lot of interest, um, and that's a sign that you're putting out the right value proposition at the very least. Retention is a separate product or is a separate issue, but when you're finding market fit, your value proposition is super important. So customers are signing up. That's what product market fit looks like. Um, Customers are spontaneously telling others. So I think that's number two, is that there's some sort of organic growth within your community where people are sharing and maybe even instructing their friends, family members, community on how to use your product. That's the best. And then number three is that you can't hire fast enough, is that your team members are stretched to their capacity and that you need to hire more folks. These are all symptoms that you found some product market fit. And there might be some more, obviously, around revenue um, and product satisfaction scores, like the Net Promoter Score. Those all help, and I would use multiple to validate or verify that you have actually product market fit.
Okay. What is not product market fit?
You don't have any customers. No one is talking about your product online or sharing it. Um, no one wants to join your company. Your mom doesn't understand what you do. Things like that.
Okay. Well, actually, just yesterday I was reading the answers of startups, and we always ask when they say that they have product market fit, like, hey, why do you feel or think that your startup have achieved product market fit? And it was a paragraph this big, like 10 or 12 lines. And they explain the market, how fast it's growing. They just grow three lines about their traction and how good the product is. And then again to the market and to other things not related directly to their customers and the product and the stickiness of that. It was like, man, you are telling me everything, but you are saying nothing at the same time. So
Yeah,
startups don't do that when someone asks you to about, hey, why do you say that you have achieved this? It's like your product with your customer and not the market, not the technology evolving or whatever, but just everything related to your product and your customer.
I agree. I agree. And I think data is probably the most compelling way to respond to that question. So something like, out of seven in the Net Promoter Score, we have a six or a seven. Um, we have a 95% satisfaction rate from our existing customers. Um, Over the last 3 weeks, we've had 3,000 signups. We have 5,000 users looking to use the product upon release. These are really helpful metrics. And if you're running an ad campaign, like we'll do a lot, you can also use the conversion metrics from your advertisement. So 6% of clicks signed up, or we have a customer acquisition cost of $1 or something really low. These numbers are the most memorable and powerful for a VC or angel investor to hear, and are the most convincing.
Okay. So you will say that a CAC of $1 is a good number, just as a reference?
Well, it depends on the industry for sure,
B2C.
and lifetime value of the customer. But I'd say if your lifetime value of your customer is upwards of $5, then a $1 customer acquisition cost is pretty good. But there's more involved in customer acquisition costs than just the conversion on the
Yeah.
ad. You've got customer, support and maintenance, um, other overhead and different, that can come from different marketing channels. So yeah, it's a little bit more of a nuanced calculation. But if we were going to send, if we're going to have a reference, I think $1 is pretty solid, and less than that for like mobile games or um, mobile apps is reasonable. But assets like cars or insurance policies, things that cost tens of thousands of dollars, their customer acquisition costs are in the hundreds, 200, 300, $400.
Okay.
Can really vary.
We spoke about the Superhuman product market fit engine. I would
Yeah,
like to bring it back to the conversation. Um, well, there's no question. Just if you could, can you please like explain? You kind of explain because you said 60 and 40%. No, you say 60%. But yeah, that's something that we also recommend to every single startup that is not understanding or have the concept like really clear. Um, because it's a really good example for a startup to have in mind.
yes, I agree. Give me a sec.
Yeah, well, for those who don't use or have heard about Superhuman, I don't use it, but it's basically a tool that help you have your email like in order, up to date with the emails, and prioritize the most relevant things for you to follow up in a good time. So kind of.
That's right. That's right. So this superhuman, um, is an article that was written by First Round Review, um, and it came from Sean Ellis, who ended up coining the term growth hacker. And this method is really helpful for companies that already have a product in market, or an MVP, and there's like some users using it. And what you want to do here is ask one question. It's a beautifully phrased question. The question is, how would you feel if you could no longer use this product? And then measure the percent of people who answer very disappointed. And those are the power users, right? So the folks that answer very disappointed, you want to talk to them, you want to interview them, you want to understand their lives. That's a jobs to be done framework right there. So you can find more of them, and it really helps bring focus um, to the customers that are getting the most value out of your product.
Nice. And you can Google it as just like that, right? Superhuman engine, product market fit
Product
engine.
market fit engine. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Well, before moving on to other topic, would you like to add something about product market fit or validation, Nick?
One of my favorite things to share with founders in the early stages as they're growing their business is around culture.
Okay.
Um, as your company grows from 1 to 5 to 20 to 100, culture is even more important. And that's something that you can start from day one. And so the culture that I really want to be seeing more of and want to inspire founders to promote is one that's focused on data, using data to make decisions, and asking your colleagues for data when they're making a decision. And the second is calling out assumptions. So if someone is saying, a lot of times that'll start with the CEO or someone that's higher in the organization or the founder, they'll lay out a bunch of assumptions, or they'll lay out a bunch of ideas, we'll call them actually. And what they don't realize is that idea is riddled with assumptions. And so what I think is the most powerful thing in starting a company with strong culture that can achieve product market fit, people are constantly asking what the assumption is in the underlying idea and identifying it quickly, and then finding a way to gather data around that assumption to validate it or invalidate it. And that's something that's looked over. And because we're so focused on the early term of building a company, we forget about how that translates as the company grows.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing. And
Sure.
that's actually kind of my next question. Not with the same focus, but it's more about cultural differences between the US and, in this case, Mexico. You are currently living here in the country. Just moved 3 months or 4 months ago.
That's right.
Maybe it's a little bit early for me to ask you this, but what have you felt different so far?
You're right. It's early for me to make broad um, assessments. I think that the ecosystem is on fire in Mexico. I think while Brazil might be one of the stronger economies in Latin America, there is a language limitation. And so Colombia and Mexico are really shaping up to be the heart of the Latin American startup economy. What is lacking, I think, is more exited founders. And this
Okay.
is the case in Chicago, Illinois, in the United States. If you can create more founders who have exits and have cash to then invest into companies, the likelihood of that investment going into early stage businesses goes up because founders and former technologists or former founders are better at evaluating those deals than the bankers and the finance guys and women out there, um, because they have the experience and they understand how to apply it and how to sense what's working and what's not working. So if I could encourage one thing, um, with the Department of Economic Affairs in Mexico, or just general leaders within the ecosystem, is to encourage and try to facilitate more acquisitions and more exits, so that founders can reinvest that capital into the ecosystem.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Um, we just have a similar conversation with someone from SeedStars. Um, they were well at the end of the podcast. We said like, hey, there should be more M&A before Series A, Series B, in order to founders to acquire or get or just acquire the technology or something like that. So that's interesting. And this week I was reading on Twitter. I don't remember if it was Fran Garcia or Enzo who shared something like that. Like um, companies, startups that have make a significant return for their investors. The list was about 5 or 4 companies from 2000 to nowadays. So it's like, yeah, we need to facilitate or start having more exits,
That's right.
because as long as we have, it's going to happen what you just mentioned. The circle is going to move faster. Um, but yeah, thanks for the opinion.
Sure.
Our last, well, yeah, our maybe last topic, tips for Latin American founders trying to start sales in the US or launching a B2B company or B2B or B2C company in the US in order to start selling their acquiring customers?
It's a tough question, but it's also simple. The process you use to understand your customer in Latin America, it's the same process you need to understand your customer in the United States.
Okay.
Listening intently, keeping a tight loop on that feedback, translating those insights and feedback into product features quickly is the most important thing in your company, regardless of the market that you're entering or are a part of. I will say that it costs more money to grow a product in the United States because you're competing with just a huge market of other service providers and platforms and other things. So I think, having a large budget for marketing in the United States is pretty important. There's clever ways to grow markets, and you can get, a wedge with Mexican, any Latin American population within the United States, of which there's a growing number, of course.
Yep.
But that won't be enough to build an entire business on, or it will be a little bit harder. So I would say equip yourself with some good research and data, come in with a big marketing budget, and iterate that strategy pretty quickly.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, actually, well, according to Latinometrics, a really popular tool that, well, they kind of put the data into a beautiful graph. So they share that Latin American people in the US, it's like the fourth or fifth economy in the world. So it's like,
Yeah.
I have heard, maybe I'm wrong, that in the US it's like more common to have a specific software for every single thing instead of, as we do it here in LATAM, like acquiring one thing for almost everything or something like that.
This goes back to the jobs to be done framework a little bit. I think it's easy for a consumer to think about the problem they have and look for a solution to that problem versus understand a service generally and how that solution fits a problem that they have. And so even when you think about the Chinese app WeChat, which is a very centralized product, and in Latin America, Rappi, people have a little bit of difficulty adopting those in the United States because it doesn't fit an exact problem or need right away. So companies like that have a all-in-one solution will oftentimes need to market a specific part of that solution to a specific population in order to get solid adoption.
Okay. Okay, yeah, here, well, there has been like, we have seen an increase of founders trying to build super apps for at least two or three things from the very beginning. Like, hey, I have less than 10,000 downloads and already have this main feature and this other main feature. So interesting. That
I'm very doubtful of those applications. Having tried to build one myself for media, an all-in-one media app for music, podcasts, blog content, social media, etc. People, when I interviewed my customer, they said that they wanted it. They said it would be convenient. They said it would save them time. But in reality, I had to break existing habits, and those habits were too hard for me to break. There's a lot of value in dopamine being hit when you're, going through Instagram And the idea of me consuming a certain type of media is also contextual, right? I will listen to music when I'm doing other things. I'll listen to a podcast when I'm looking to learn. I'll watch a video when I'm more static or sedentary. Um, I'll read something when I don't have distraction. So when you're creating a product that is an all-in-one, it's really important to think about the context in which each part of that tool will be consumed.
Okay. How did you realize about that about the context?
Um, User stats. We would get pretty good downloads because the idea of having an all-in-one, we were selling to super fans or people who are really big fans of, Bad Bunny or Ariana Grande or some of these big celebrities. They can follow along with them in one place. And that value proposition really resonated with a lot of people. And we had good download numbers, but the retention was bad. And so I didn't realize that this was the wrong product until we were able to understand the retention. And that's something that's really hard to avoid, unless you have the experience. So that's why I'm hoping to share is like consider the context in which each of the aspects of your all-in-one tool, successful all-in-one productivity tool in the United States. And I think they're succeeding because they're a browser-based product and they recognize that their browser tabs, the context of their solution is already in the browser. So they don't need to worry about context shifting or different, different ways that the product could be used or adopted on a daily basis.
Okay. Yeah, there's a well, we might have a complete different podcast just for that, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
Last question, Nick. Something that I didn't ask you that you would like to share with the audience, or any last idea or recommendation that you like to share? If you have, if you don't, it's okay.
I think I'll share something that I've learned from others in the Latin American market. It's hard for Americans to enter the Latin American market because they lack a lot of the cultural nuances. And so I'm really excited for the next generation of entrepreneurs coming from Latin America who are using their knowledge and implicit understanding of the culture to build products for specific things. And I think the idea of taking something that works in the US or in China or in Europe and then bringing it to Mexico is flawed. I think starting from Mexico or somewhere else in Latin America and then building from there is wise.
Okay.
And I'm excited to see more of those solutions come to market.
Okay. Nice. A final call to action, Nick. Where can people follow you or follow your company on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, website, whatever?
Yeah, I'm most active on LinkedIn. You can just search for my name, Nick McEvily, McEvily, and you can visit our website at furtherfaster.ventures.
Nice. Well, it was a pleasure, an honor, and thanks for the patience again. Hopefully, you enjoyed it as much as I did, and thanks a lot.
Sí,
Hopefully,
sí.
see you soon. Well, oh yeah, we'll be launching a specific content about product market fit very soon with Nick. So wait for it, and see you very
Yeah, I'm
soon.
excited to share more. And thank you, Isra. Gracias.
Thank you.